So recently, Anthony Dickey released a video titled Beware of Curly Cuts. And as someone who gets curly cuts and somebody who respects Anthony Dickey's work, I was like, of course, I gotta watch this video. I knew what I was getting into because the name of the video is actually Beware of Curly Cuts and, you know, why they aren't recommended. So I already knew the video was gonna end with him not recommending curly cuts. And I take his recommendation seriously because Anthony Dickey is like the first person I saw on the internet who did a wash and go with hair that looked like mine. I was never able to get one to go, you know, based on his videos alone. So then, like, when Black Girl Curls approach came along, it filled in some of the gaps that I didn't quite get, you know, just watching the short videos from the Anthony Dickey method. So I respect him in the textured space, and I respect him as, you know, somebody big in the wash and go space. So when he talks about curly cuts, I'm going to listen. I've seen this video already, and I'm going to keep getting my curly cuts. But I'm just going to react and respond about what I saw, because I agree with a lot of what he's saying and why it doesn't really apply to the curly cuts I'm currently getting. So let's get into this video.
Do you recommend curly cuts? What is a curly cut? I know what it is. It's a gimmick. A curly cut is a gimmick because that's just what y'all heard. And it's defined by going in and cutting one curl at a time, right? It even sounds gimmicky, but I guess it sounds okay in theory and it's very attractive to people with curly hair or people who swear by it. From what I understand, it's half a haircut. One curl at a time is not how the hair grows out of your head. Your hair grows out of your head one follicle at a time. And they make up and represent the entire head of hair and hair texture or type of that you have that's unique to you, right? And depending upon the pattern that God gave you will determine how all of those strands loop and form its unique curl or coil and or wave. You can't simply go in and cut one curl at a time when there's 1,000 hair strands that you didn't cut. And or what if you have hair that is down in the interior of the hair that you haven't cut? So ultimately you didn't cut all the hair.
So here's where I absolutely do agree with Dickey that if you're cutting hair one curl at a time without addressing hair down in the interior, like it's not a proper haircut. The curly cut I get is none of that, because the curly cut that I get is set with the intention of cutting it and make sure that all my hair down in the interior is brushed out and, you know, accumulated in those curls. So I do agree, like a curl by curl cut, like if somebody was trying to do a haircut on this hair that I have now, well, it's an older wash and go, and also I just didn't set it intentionally. So somebody tried to do a curl by curl cut on this, it wouldn't work out. And I agree, a curl by curl cut does sound like a gimmick. Again, that's not the type of curly cut that I get. And I will also say, like, when Dickey first came out, there were people that dismissed his approach to caring for type 4 hair as a gimmick. But I appreciated him, you know, considering my texture when doing wash and go, just like I appreciate people who are learning how to do curly cuts on textured hair, whether other people think it's a gimmick or not. So there's that.
And there's only two reasons to pick up scissors: to maintain the health of each strand and to leave you with a shape of your choosing. And if I can't accomplish those two things, then I need my license revoked. We all learn how to cut hair. And if you've thought enough about every hair texture as a stylist, regardless of whether you were taught or told anything about kinky or curlier textures in cosmetology school, which you probably weren't, it is incumbent of you to have the knowledge as a professional to be able to cater to all hair textures. But I digress, because not everybody's doing that. But the consumer does demand it, and so unfortunately what comes along sometime is, as a result of half of the textures never being mentioned, is this very gimmick approach to cutting hair. I'm under the assumption, and the feedback that I get from thousands of women over the last 30-something years was that they want their hair to be healthy so they can wear it however they choose without judgment. And so when someone goes natural or is on their natural hair journey or on their curly hair and kinky hair journey, What they want is knowledge about how they can have the most versatile hair texture.
And again, I agree with what he's saying. The salon I go to is run by a stylist who is very knowledgeable on all things natural hair. She does blown out cuts, she does curly cuts, she does locks, she does twisted updos, like she does it all. So she's very knowledgeable on texture and she understands my personal hair goals. And like I said, she does not do a curl by curl cut, but when she is cutting my hair curly, she is making sure that each strand is addressed. Just like when you do a blowout cut, you're not taking each strand and cutting each cut, but you look at the collective and look for inconsistencies and you cut it that way. That is the same approach that she's taking just with my hair in its textured state, which again, I'll get into more at the end. And I found that the curly cuts that I get do provide versatility for how I personally like to wear my hair. So I like to wear my hair in wash it goes, rod sets, twist outs. Those are my main go-to styles. And the curly cut works out well for me to give me the versatility in all those styles. And like I said, my stylist personally, even though my hair is curly, does make sure that every strand is maintained. A blowout cut doesn't need to be a strand by strand cut for it to be accurate. But again, I'll show more at the end of the video because there's more up with technique. So she took everything she learned. My stylist personally took everything she learned in beauty school and throughout her practice applied it to textured hair with the understanding that no, I don't want a curl by curl cut, but I also don't want a blown out cut. Just using the different techniques in her toolbox to give me what I want to wear the styles that I want. I don't really wear my hair straight. I haven't straightened my hair in a long time. And I don't like doing it just because it's a lot of effort and it doesn't last long. And again, like the gimmick thing, you know, people do wash it goes in salons because that's what people want with their textured hair. So the same thing with curly cut, like the traditional curly cuts from like 30 years ago, would I have gotten one, or 10, 15, however long ago they started, would I have gotten one? No way. The curly cut that my stylist does that is specific to my texture of hair and like my goals, yes, I will sit for that. But let's watch the rest of this video.
When you get that curly cut, remember it was developed by someone who had one hair type. They had curly hair. And she introduced that technique to all hair textures, which is again a one size fits all approach to hair, which leaves women out in the cold who want to wear their hair straight, who want to do other styles, and or who want their hair to grow quicker. And if you don't cut all the hair, then one strong strand will split and turn it into 2 or 3 weak strands, and that hair will grow nowhere fast. So you might notice that your hair looks great the first day, and 3 months from now it hasn't grown any because you still have hair that is popping off of the ends, and or you can't seem to get your hairline to stop being so frizzy, or you can't stop the rest of your hair to being so unruly or unkept, and or you blow it out one day and it looks like a hot mess. So the curly cut is like going to the dentist and getting every other tooth cleaned. It's half of a haircut. I would do that haircut after, that portion of the haircut after I went and it technically shaped the hair and trimmed it and make sure that all the ends had been clipped.
I think the notion that there's one type of curly cut is a common misconception, and I get that from people who don't get curly cuts or who don't do them. But the curly cut technique that is used for my hair was actually developed with people whose hair texture is not that different from mine. And I understand which curly cut he's talking about. I think he's talking about the diva cut. I think everybody's beating around the bush. I don't personally get a diva cut, even though I think my stylist has been trained in it. Yes, I used to see those curly cuts and I would never sit for one. So they just like literally take your hair and start pulling at curl by curl by curl by curl and doing that. And yes, that is half of a haircut and I would not sit for that. But my stylist does sit down and does a very technical approach to my hair. Like I said, I'm not a stylist, so I can't speak on it, but she does work section by section to make sure every strand is addressed. And only after that does she go back and make, will she do, you know, if there's 1 or 2 curls out of place or something, will she go in and snip it so that it's adjusted. So the cut that I personally get is both technical and afterwards goes around to address the shape. All right, let's finish watching the rest of this video.
You want the same thickness from root to end on every hair of your head, on every hair on your head, regardless of length and or shape, right? The same length or shape. The hair from thickness from the root to the end should be the same thickness. And I should be able to account when I'm cutting your hair for the multiple textures that you have on one head. We all learn how to cut hair, but it's not, you know, common sense is not common. So good luck with that curly cut. I don't cut curly cut, like I don't subscribe to the curly cut. I take a much more customizable approach to the hair that's sitting in front of me, and I cut it based off of that hair texture, which is, as you well know, as many shades of a people as we are as many hair textures as there are. So if that seems to be the most common sense approach.
Well, I guess common sense ain't so common. But yes, my stylist does take my texture into account, but she can look at my texture and still see split ends, single strand knots, and all the things that would get addressed in a haircut if I blew it out. And she doesn't need to use common sense because she has a knowledge base that allows her to execute a cut on the multiple textures in my hair and account for the multiple textures in my hair in the haircut she does. I did look at the website for hair rules and just to see what technique to cutting that they take, and I can't tell. Like, I can't tell. It literally says based on your texture, like, we'll give you a trim, and if you haven't had a cut, because everybody, you know, it's 2023 and there's no such thing as a trim anymore. If you can put in scissors to your hair, it's a cut. So I did go look at the Hair Rules website, and it just says, you know, the haircut, it doesn't have the methodology. So it just says, you know, we'll cut based on the texture of your hair, which is nice, but like for me, as you know, if I was looking at that website as a client, like I wouldn't even know what that meant. Like, are you cutting my hair wet? Are you cutting it dry? Are you blowing it out? Because if I'm coming in for a wash and go, like, are you gonna blow it out, trim it, and then re-wet it and cut it curly, or are you gonna like stretch it while it's wet? Like, that would make me so uncomfortable as a first-time client. Like, I'm sure he has established clients and they walk in and that's not a big deal, but like for me, that's not enough. Like, I knew exactly what kind of cut my stylist was gonna do after looking at her website and going through that kind of thing. But I will get into a little bit of how my stylist makes sure each strand is addressed. The way she sets my hair in a wash and go in the salon is much different from how I set it at home, only because like she's really meticulous about going through, taking the curly brush and smoothing it through to make sure that there are no strands that get stuck down in the interior. Pull them out to make sure that they're, well, stretch them out, elongate them, so that, you know, as many hairs as possible reach the ends. Because I mean, the fact of the matter is, even in the blowout cut, even if you blow out all the hair, get it straight, your hair is all at different lengths at different, you know, any given time. So you still have strands like that are shorter that are not going to reach the end of the cut. So it's the same thing, but just my hair being in the texture that it is, she brushes it out, gets as much of it as elongated as possible, and she sets it that way. And then when she goes through the same way that, you know, blow dry stylists take it between their fingers and kind of cut off the ends, that's the same thing she's doing, section by section, not curl by curl. My hair just happens to be textured. So she's using both her skills and common sense to cut my hair. And I'll leave a few links below. One of the techniques she learns, because she's trained in multiple techniques. And from my understanding, again, limited understanding, there's only one curl by curl cutting techniques out of like the 10 that are kind of mainstream. Yeah, so people have over the years adapted it to different textures of hair because they know what people want, and most people do not want a curl by curl curly cut. Well, that's all I got for today, and thanks for watching.